Amitofo. Good to see you here as you begin to trickle in. Today's topic is going to be a little bit about Hongren, a little bit about a few other things, and picking up a few pieces from last week. We're going to start first with the four great vows. Join your palms. Vow. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless fixations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. There was talk about teaching the Dharma to different sentient beings, so I took it to heart, and I was teaching my dogs about the Dharma and also about math. And so I posed a question to them, very tricky one. What is 2 minus 2? And they said nothing. All right. So in any case, we'll continue on with that. I just wanted to come up with a little bit of levity in the evening. I wanted to talk a little bit first about what I had did last week and kind of wrap up a little bit of the roots of Chan. And we had this chart which we did, and I have to thank Michael for putting it together at the last minute where I didn't even was able to review it. And it was quite I gave him something like this, and it was pretty detailed, and he didn't know where to put some things, and so things got a little bit miscategorized, but that was not his fault nor mine. It was just we're just trying to put it together and to try to get something to show you how Chan is so unique, because when you have one school, for instance, one school, the Huayan school, they just concentrate on the Vatamsaka Sutra, and Tian Tai school on the Lotus Sutra. Even Nichiren concentrate only on the Lotus Sutra. So there's different schools that stay discrete. Madhyamaka school is that way as and Yogacara, but the sutras picked up all this information and incorporated it. If you look at it and you see the Lankavatara Sutra or the Lotus Sutra, Vatamsaka Sutra, you'll see all of these schools blending in. And in that time period in China, you have to see, it wasn't like this time period, like what time period we're going through right now. It's a time period that has to, that went over several hundred years. And I'd mentioned before that the sutras that they were receiving were already at that time several hundred years old, and the commentaries on those sutras were several hundred years old. By the time they were trickling into China, trying to get new information in now is about the same as trying to get information in today in China. You know, there's no Google, you know, but here we have Google, and we can get all this information in, and we have it at the touch of our fingers. We can put in Lotus Sutra, commentary on Lotus Sutra. We can put in a name, you know, criticism of such and such, and we have it just like that. We don't have to wait for somebody to travel 1,000 miles to bring us a new scroll. And so all of this stuff was coming in bit by bit. And when they got the information, they just read it and studied it and really went at it and compared it, just as it was happening originally. But what's unique about this is that in Chan, they didn't necessarily have to fight about it or distinguish it or discriminate one against the other. That had already been done. That was already in the commentaries and the treatises that were coming through along with the sutras, that all of those battles had been fought. They were just looking at it and going like, you know, I want to to read this this book, and it was, wow, this is a great book, and as one looked at it, it might have been Charles Dickens, and but to people reading it right now, it's fresh, and but it was written several a couple hundred years ago. And so the thing is that it's important that we look and see how these things are. And my point about this was not making a scholastic list. There's scholastic lists, and there's scholastic lists for scholars, and that's fine. Then there's no problem with scholastic lists, but it doesn't give you the flavor of Chan. It doesn't see how all of this was blended in to Chan. And it's really hard when you look at it and say, this is when Chan started. We kind of say, oh, well, Chan started when Bodhidharma came and he brought the Lankavatara Sutra, but Chan was here before that. That's kind of a scholarly date that was placed there and said, this is when Chan was. And everybody says, anybody object? Nobody object? Okay, that's the date when Chan started. There isn't something saying, on this date in history, Chan started. Or we go to the guy and say, let's talk to Chan. Who are you? My name's Chan. I invented Chan. We don't have that kind of historicity that shows when Chan was started. What we have is that this amalgamation of many different kinds of studies coming in and being used in a way, and certainly Bodhidharma with his wall gazing and just mind was highlighted. And you have to remember, when I started talking about the patriarchs way back when, the first three patriarchs in particular, there wasn't a whole lot written about them, and not too much in terms of biography. So it was kind of all filled in a couple of hundred years after them on one point, and then several hundred years later, it was filled in again in terms of the original ones. They were talking about the Lanka masters. They weren't saying Chan masters. They're saying the Lanka masters. Why? Because that's what they were concentrating on, because that's what they had. And so then they started teaching it, and then it got kind of scholars put the name Vayapula on there, saying, okay, well, this is a teaching that embodies all of it. Well, then, so the Lanka was certified in that way. Lotus was certified. So what about our sutra? Oh, yeah, that one is too. But by and large, they do have it. And what I'm trying to do is put a people perspective on what was happening there rather than a scholar perspective, because the scholars are looking at this stuff, and there are these people, and they're looking at the scrolls and saying, what I think that this means is blah, blah, blah. That's somebody housed away somewhere, either in a temple or in a palace, that's pontificating on these particular subjects and saying that this is what it is. You ask the person on the street about that, and say, what is Chan? And they'd say, what does that have to do with the price of beans? Huh? Exactly. That's Chan. And or they might have said, hey, go ask the lamppost. And they go, that's brilliant. And the thing is that it is this kind of a way that we look at this, so that we don't get buried in the scholarly part. I'm not saying not to study. I'm not saying just push the scholars apart, but you can't teach Chan. You can't do it. It's an abomination to try to teach Chan. It defies Chan to try to teach it. And it doesn't mean that we can study the history of Buddhism and history of Buddhism as it relates to Chan, but Chan cannot be taught. So what I do is I bring together all of these components that are there. And when we bring these components together, these are the things that made up Chan. There wasn't a particular study guide that says this is Chan, and then these things went this way and whatever. All we're doing is positing what we might think of what happened 1,500 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, or 2,500 years ago, and we really don't know. You know, I've kind of mentioned before, maybe 5,000 years from now, they'll say that there was a religion that was everywhere in the world, and this one religion was so strong, and they were worshiping the golden arches, and everywhere you go, you will see a temple with golden arches. We've unearthed them everywhere, and so you know, of course, that's like McDonald's, but that's what historians do. They look at it and they posit what they think it might have been. And so we have to take that with a grain of salt in terms of studying, and understand that if we're historians, so be it, be a historian. If you're a philosopher, so be it, be a philosopher. If you're a practitioner of Chan, then you practice. You use all this information that's coming in, and it's wonderful information. And we use it to practice with it. We use it to look into mind, and as often said, that it's beyond the words and phrases. So I wanted to put that out there so that you don't get the wrong idea of what you think a Chan master should utilize this information. The Chan master utilizes all of these sutras, all of these treatises, in order to explain the Dharma to others, and to allow them to create an environment where that they can have their own realizations by simply looking at one, how it works, how mind works, and also then giving faith that it goes beyond these words on the page, and that one practicing diligently with faith will come to these realizations. And it's very, very interesting, because when I first started, I started thinking about all the things and how I felt like it was some things were incredulous what they were talking about. And I'm looking at it and going, well, is this Scientology or something? You know, how they're creating these things, or whatever. But the more I studied, it's very unusual, the more I accepted that. And part of that was from the realizations of mind itself, and just seeing the very beginning of the potentiality of a mind that's infinite, and that is not bound by space or time. We cannot understand that as a samsaric person, because it's so far beyond our ability to process it mentally in reason. And then I ran into the thing saying, oh, well, then do we have, you know, if we abandon reason, you know, are we making ourselves stupid to study, because we have to abandon reason? But it's only the reason that is within samsara, not mind reason and not mind perception. And that was, to me, was a big turning point, is using the mind's own perception. When you understand this, and you understand how the mind's perception can change the perspective of what we have, so that we can see things in a different way, rather than from the viewpoint of samsara and the rules that pertain to this particular world. They do not govern the Buddha. The Buddha mind is the creator of that, within a very tight set of facts. To us, we say, well, it's like big. I mean, it's as big as the world. And then you think, right there, you say, stop. Think about how big the world is. Is the world big? Oh, yes, it's very, very big. Compared to the sun, compared to 10 billion suns, it's like a mote of dust. But our perspective is one from samsara. So we don't know that. We don't know what's beyond the universe. We don't know how many universes are there. We can pause it and say, I think about that. And whatever is there can be known, but not by an individual, but known by mind. I'm not saying I know those secrets of the universe. I just know that the universe is incredibly, incredibly vast, and that which we call a universe is not a one and only. And yet, all of that could easily fit on a single strand of hair of the Buddha, just the tip of the Buddha hair. All of that could fit right there. And you go, how does that work? That just sounds like, baloney, but it's because it's all created by the mind. We don't understand that. We don't understand that this world is created by the mind. And this is kind of my segue into Master Hongren, the fifth patriarch, just simply because he was really pushing mind and pushing this is how we see things, and this is your starting point. If you want to practice Chan, you have to see this. And all of that we had on that Roots of Chan sheet that we were looking at was all designed to give you a feel for it. It's not something where a scholar will look at that and go, Gilbert doesn't know what he's talking about, because this should be here or this should be there or whatever, and that you forget about the 5 Chan schools or whatever and blah blah blah. But that's not my intention. My intention is to kind of give you a feeling for what was happening back then, to use what I've been coining as a phrase, is this distant mirror, to see what was going on in that time period, so that you can see from where this comes from. And we always think of Chan as a discrete school, or even 5 schools that were narrowed down to 2 schools or whatever. It isn't in this way. Scholars categorize all these things out and put them in certain ways, and it's all right. It's okay. You could make an argument, okay, there was this school and this school and this, but it was territorial by and large. It was from one place to another, and they started doing it. So, for instance, like Hongren had this East Mountain teaching. And then when we look at it and they say, well, what was East Mountain teaching? Well, it was kind of in between the North and the South schools. And you go, well, these are all directional. Yeah, but are they doctrinally different? To some extent they are, and then to some extent they're not. And Huineng's Platform Sutra actually served to join them together again, so that it wasn't this northern and southern school, that this sudden illumination and the gradual illumination are not 2 different things. They are practices to reach the same place. We cannot say, oh, that one is better than the other. People can take those kinds of things, and maybe somebody said that back then and somebody ran with it, like somebody from, I'll be judicious, from CNN or Fox News, and they blow it up into something bigger than it really was. And so the thing is that we have to see that and understand that all of this is of value. And if you want to become a Buddhist historian, yes, then you have to go through and go through the whole thing of knowing the differences between these schools and knowing what battles and whatever it is. And that's fine. There's no problem with that. But as you are practicing, we can learn that, but we don't try to divide it up and pigeonhole it. This is really important for us not to do that to the Dharma. The Dharma is the Dharma. It's good. And when we try to do that and we try to attribute this to this and this, and then say, oh, well, this school is better than this school, or the Abhidharma was talking about real, and we saw that kind of viciousness that Sariputra underwent in the Mahayana Sutras. No, they were marking out certain territory and doing things. But on the other hand, this kind of practice was necessary to hammer out what were the fundamental aspects of the practice. What was the things that were of value? And that's what is so valuable with Chan, is that it took the things that were really valuable and it preserved them and it incorporated them into the practice. I'll give you an example. You know, in our Roots of Chan, there's a category called Avatamsaka Sutra. And if you can put that up for a second, if anybody has the latest version of that. And then under Avatamsaka Sutra. And in any case, there's a part that's indicating Indra's net, which is this net of like a network of everything, every single particle in the Dharma Dhatu. And in this kind of a way, everything reflects the other, so that there's not necessarily the scale that we'd see in samsara, but that we would see as what one would see in by mind. And so when to look at Indra's net, we have to have the idea of mind, not the perspective of the five skandha, but the perspective of mind, and seeing this kind of an incredible net. There's another example of where there was a room that had infinite mirrors or infinite visions, because the whole room was made of mirrors. And I think I talked about that in the retreat. But it's very interesting, because what would a mirror see facing a mirror? The same thing as the dog's answer, nothing. But that's what it is. It is this nothingness, but it's not necessarily means nothing. It's like white is white, but white incorporates all of the other colors of the spectrum. And so it is not the emptiness of, let's say, if we're using that same analogy, black, because people are going to say, well, didn't the Buddha say that a blind man can see black? Yeah. So I'm just using this as a very limited way of doing this. So somebody maybe 200 years from now might try to criticize me. I just say, go back to your studies. Okay. So in this YN school, we were talking about noumenon and phenomenon, you know, and they had this thing as one is all and all is one. It's kind of like a Musketeers thing, reduced down to the lowest common denominator. But it is just, again, pointing to mind. Nothing wrong with that. That's ekayana, you know, in terms of how we look at that and we see. And then I was talking about these two. There's Zongmi and Fazang were two of the major proponents for the YN school. But Fazang had an interesting analogies. And one of them was the rafter. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase it. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. But essentially, when you say rafter, you may think a rafter is somebody that floats on a raft. Forget about that one. Just think of someone like a carpenter that's created the rafters of a structure, of a building. And so he makes the building, and when you look at it and you look at the building, then you say, okay, well, this rafter, it has built this building, but he also takes his name from the very fact that he built the building. He's not separate from it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be called a rafter or a carpenter. He would be called something else. But the two are dependent on each other. And this is, it's very interesting, very complex. But what's doing is it's merging the noumenon and the phenomenon so that there's not two, but they are dependent on each other, even as phenomena is dependent on each other to arise. Also, the noumenon phenomenon cannot be cut out of it. And then he made that clear by his second analogy, which is a golden lion. So you can imagine a golden lion. And so if you have a statue of this golden lion and you see it, you understand that the value of the golden lion isn't necessarily in its appearance. It may be a very great artistic, but inherent within it, it's made by not other than just this gold. That's its intrinsic value. And so when we see anything, it is in this way of this idea of a golden lion, but we cannot separate the gold from the lion. So otherwise we could not call it a golden lion. And so there's this connection with everything we see. And again, to study these two examples could take a long time to do, and it certainly would take, I would be doing a disservice just even talking about it for one class. But I'm touching on it to show you how different schools use these kind of concepts of ekayana or mind, and the idea that everything is created by the mind. So we go back and we understand everything's created by the mind. The rafter creates the house. And the idea that whatever is in the lion, irregardless of whatever its shape, it has this intrinsic nature. So these two different these points help us understand how to view mind. That's what the Huayan school is doing. There's nothing wrong with that. We can't say, oh, no, that one is different. I remember when I first was coming up, I would look at Tian Tai and kind of go, oh, well, that's a separate school. They're like all intellectual and stuff. I have to apologize, because it was my ignorance in not understanding that. Yeah, they went overboard with the intellectual, but the substance of what they were doing was still valuable, is still useful. And so when we look at things like that, Sean takes what is useful in all of these things. The last part I wanted to talk about today on this chart was down in the bottom right-hand corner, the 4 types of teachings. And so these all come up, but it's interesting because I've been kind of teaching about this with my own way of describing it as channels. But in the teaching, there is a, let's say, basic cable channel that just gives you the basic information. These don't necessarily apply to these 4 types of teachings here, but it's something close to it. And then there is a teaching that is the profound one, where one is contemplating what the meaning is of what one read. For instance, I gave you basic channel, rafter, and golden lion. But if you contemplated that, you could get the profound meaning of that. And so I would say that was more of a profound channel. And then there's another channel that is beyond that, which is, here they call it secret, but it's another word for esoteric. I often refer to it as esoteric, not as the esoteric school, but as the way in which this information comes in, not via a linear processing of information, but a sudden download of the information there, of what is beyond the profound meaning, beyond what is the words that are there, but a realization of what's there. You could say it was the heart of the author of what you're reading that you are connecting with. And that is where we want to go. That's where we're trying to get to when we're reading, is that we need to slow down when we read. We need to see the things very, very carefully. And when we do, and you look at things, then you allow that time for the self-absorption. The self-absorption is because as you're looking at this and your mind is concentrating on this, then there's no other thoughts coming in. You are doing a sincere investigation of whatever the presentation is, whether it's the Lankavatara Sutra or something from Tiantai, Vatamsaka, Diamond Sutra or whatever. And we just go by and do a basic channel thing with it. And I would say 98% of the people study in this way. 2% study in a way where they can really see the profound. And that's because they want to do that, and I know when I have students that have that ability to be able to do that. And there's a lot of you here. And then beyond that, I can't give it a percentage, but those that are able to reach the esoteric. But in saying all of that, there's not one of you that is incapable of reaching the esoteric, of reaching the secret teachings. The secret teachings are just simply how mind works by the perspective of mind itself. It is not us looking at mind. Now, I always say, that there's always, like, when you want to talk about mind, you say you're pointing to mind from the finger, right? And you're going, where's mind? Oh, mind is way, way up there. If you look way up there, you might see mind. But the perspective of mind is, if we were going to reverse this, it would be, hold on, I have to get my finger. Looking right at that fingertip, like that. The perspective is what's seeing that fingertip. Not this, but that fingertip. That's the perspective of mind. That's reversing the mind's eye. When you do that, then you have an ability to access the esoteric. Okay, so speaking of accessing the esoteric, how much time do I have? Kind of blew up all my time, but that's okay. This is going to take a while anyway. I want to go back to Hongren. These were questions, and we did talk about these questions before, but when I went back through them, I realized I did a disservice by not looking at them more carefully. And so I want to do that. Thank you, Sentha. And so the first one is, and these are all questions, and it says, why do you call the mind the fundamental teacher? So I'm always saying you have to investigate mind, right? It's not stuff I make up. That is what we do. That's why this is a forum. I have a forum called Mind Work, because that's the fundamental teacher. And the answer is, the true mind exists of itself. It does not come from the outside. As a teacher, it does not even require a tuition fee. Nothing in all the three periods of time is more dear to a person than one's mind. And that's kind of an interesting statement there, that nothing, in all the three periods of time is more dear to a person than one's mind, because that can be taken in two different ways. One of them is the reason for the obstructions of mind is one clinging to the false notion of self, rather than the self nature of mind. And so, but it is the wrongful viewpoint which is there because we hold dear what is false. But it's also true that there's nothing more dear than mind itself. So we have to look at this and we have to kind of contemplate this as to what is being said. If you discern the suchness inherent in the mind and maintain awareness of it, you will reach the other shore of nirvana. The deluded forsake it and fall into the three lower modes of existence. Therefore, it is known that the Buddhas in the three periods of time take their own true mind as a teacher. So when we look at it, we're mindful of what's happening. We're mindful that if we do this wrong, we just fall into back into samsara, especially, you know, you don't want to fall back into the animal, ghost, or hell realm. And then quoting the Vimalakirti Sutra, it says, the existence of sentient beings is dependent on the waves of false consciousness, the essence of which is illusory. And so this part of the Vimalakirti Sutra is very, very powerful, because we have to see that the existence of sentient beings it's dependent on all of these waves of false consciousness that run through the mind. When we sit to meditate, turning the mind's eye in the proper way and seeing in the meditation not just the wall, but all of the projections that are going up, but also all of the emotions that are arising, the feelings that are arising, the sense of self that is arising is also perceived by the mind's eye. Most people, when they meditate, they don't do that. They meditate and say, I'm meditating, when's the bell going to ring? Or I've got this now, I haven't had a thought. And they mess it all up. From the very beginning, you've got to be clear about what you're doing when you're sitting on that cushion. And when you're sitting on that cushion, essentially what you're doing is you're clear about what is arising in mind. And we have to use our highest level of discernment to discern those things that we had traditionally believed to be us doing the meditation as a projection on the mere mind, that too is not real, it's intransient. It's transient, whereas the mirror itself is intransient and the mirror looking at it is intransient. That is the mind. But we want to define the mind. But it would be and say to Pinocchio, when he still had all the strings attached, define the puppeteer and create the puppeteer. Can you create the puppeteer? Not really. You believe that you can create a lot of things and you can invent things. They're all limited to samsara. We perceive that to be our sense of self. But when we look at how minute this really is in mind, then we get a different perspective of it than what we had before. We believe we're the puppeteer. We're not the puppeteer. Mind is the puppeteer. Mind is the creator. And they do refer to that in many sutras as a mechanical puppet, cannot create anything, although we've convinced ourselves that we can create. I just thought this up. What if you dip an apple in caramel? That would be good. That's a great creation. No. And so we say, well, who created that? I created that whole idea of that. Well, who created the caramel? Who created the apple? Who created all these other things? And it's all dependently arising. But we cannot see this and take credit for those things. They're all causes and conditions. It's difficult for us to break through. It's difficult for us to try to overcome the habitual tendencies of that I believe that I exist. And so so that's something that's important for us to break that down by using the profound wisdom to look at things, not just simply just look and say that, okay, well, my brain is working, so I must exist, and I'm tired, so I must exist, or I'm hungry, and try to establish your proof of your existence in that way. These are all products of false consciousness, as the Vilamakruti Sutra says. And it says, why is the mind of ordinary people superior to the mind of the Buddhas? So this is kind of a trick question, because they're saying, why is the mind of the ordinary people superior to the mind of the Buddhas? But it's related to the mind of the ordinary people in relation to practice, that it's superior. Why is it superior? You could say the statement I've said several times now, that the Buddhas use the vexations of sentient beings to practice. The Buddhas don't use the Buddha mind to practice. They use the vexations of sentient beings, because that's where the problem is. That's where the obscurations are. The Buddha would not go to a perfect diamond and say, you know what, I need to polish this diamond. Why so? But if there's a facet on the diamond that is occluded, then that is where the Buddha would put its mind to. It's not really them, her, him, or its, but the mind attention would be on that facet of the diamond that has the obscurations on it. It would only make sense. Why would you want to? Another Buddha would come by, hey, we already cleaned this facet. Why are you cleaning it again? Instead, they say, you know what? You need to go to this land because they really need a Buddha there, or you need to go to hell to try to help over there. But why are we trying to help other Buddhas? They're already through. So it is using the vexations and discriminations of the mind in which is the practice. I'm kind of answering for him, but it says, you cannot escape birth and death by constantly reflecting on the Buddha's divorce of yourself. But you will reach the other shore of nirvana by maintaining awareness of your own fundamental mind. Maintaining awareness, again, is something that I'm always telling you to do. And someone had asked me, well, why do we meditate? Why can't we just maintain awareness all the time? We meditate because it's a controlled environment that enables us to be able to see these subtleties arising. If you can see those subtleties arising as you're walking, working, cooking, sleeping, washing, whatever, then that's fine. But it gives you a controlled environment to be able to distinguish these. So when you get off the cushion, now you're in the game. Now you're playing for real. But when you're sitting on the cushion, all you're doing is making the discernments when these kinds of mental formations are arising, and these mental things, whether they're based on fear, greed, hatred, all these different things that are there that come up, ignorance, all of them one can see when we're meditating. But it's difficult for us during the day to be able to keep our minds that way, but it enables us to then put that into practice on our daily basis. But if you're just simply sitting there and being a devotional Buddhist, this can help you in this lifetime and perhaps a beneficial rebirth, but it cannot get you out. It cannot lead to an awakening or realization, because you do not possess right view. The right view being that everything is created by the mind. And so then we start from that and we understand. We just become a better mechanical puppet. That's not enough. And that is why Hongren is really banging on this, because he's saying, don't waste your time with that. Doesn't mean that one shouldn't be devotional. Of course, every day I light incense. I yesterday I cleaned my altar. I'm adding fruit, whatever. I'm doing devotion. But all the time when I'm there, I'm saying, please help me by this body to present the Dharma in a proper way for the delivery of sentient beings, even albeit that they're illusory. And so it's in this way that we practice. And this is what Hongren's saying. By now we're down to this patriarch that's gotten all this information in, and he's beginning to define here. If you want to really see the gelling of the Chan school, this is where it's really coming in to play. The Diamond Sutra says, anyone who views me in terms of form seeks me by sorts, practicing a heretic path, and is unable to see the Tathagata. So if you go looking for the Buddha, you're not going to find the Buddha in this way. And that was a very important thing, a realization that I had from the Diamond Sutra when I first started out, because I'm going, huh? What are you talking about? Because I was coming from a Judeo-Christian background, thinking that the Buddha is somebody sitting on an altar somewhere, and that totally undermined my false consciousness as to what I thought the Buddha was. So I went, okay, let me back up. Let me read this again. Let me read it. What is going on here? And so I just read the basic, I went to the profound, but you can go into the esoteric if you really are sincere with the Diamond Sutra. The big trick with the Diamond Sutra is read it, and if you don't understand what you just read, read it again until it makes sense. Okay, don't turn the pages on sutras if you don't know what you just read. What good is that? It's like saying, oh, I read this book, and it's kind of like when you were in high school and they give you a book like The Great Gatsby to read. Did you read the book? Yeah, I read it from cover to cover. What does it mean? I don't know. There's just some guy that, they think that he killed a man or whatever, and you don't understand anything about it. You don't get it. And so you have to go and find, why did they write this in this way? A question: if the true essence of sentient beings and the Buddhas are the same, because I always pick on this part of Ling Chi, where Ling Chi's saying you want to see the minds of the Buddhas and the patriarchs. It's not other than those that are listening to me right now are the minds of the Buddhas and the patriarchs. So the question is based on this kind of a premise. And he says, then why is it that the Buddhas are not subject to the laws of generation and extinction, but have incalculable pleasures and are autonomous and unhindered by their activities, while we sentient beings have fallen into the realm of birth and death and are subject to various kinds of suffering? In today's parlance, why do they always get to go on vacation? They can go to Disneyland every time they want, and they get to the front of the line, and we have to suffer, and when we get to the front of the line, the ride's broken. What, how is that fair? If I have the Buddha mind, why can't I do that? And essentially, this is what he's saying, is that saying, if they're the same, shouldn't we enjoy these things? And again, the fallacy here is the fallacy that there is a life and being that's asking this question, or a personality or an ego, but it is not in this way. It is the mind is just mind, but the mechanical puppet cannot know that. So let's see how he responded. All the Buddhas in the 10 directions are enlightened to the Dharma nature and distinctly illuminate the mind that is the source of all individual dharmas. So referring to it in this way, they're saying that the Buddhas essentially are omnipresent, and they're enlightened to the Buddha mind intrinsic nature. And that enlightenment is essentially illuminating what is arising, because if there appears to be a slumbering Buddha or a mind that's trapped, it cannot illuminate. So it's stuck in kind of a like a vinyl record skip, just playing the same portion of the song all over every single lifetime. It may seem a little different, but it just stuck. Whereas the Buddhists don't have these obscurations in the mind. They are aware of all of those obscurations. They do not generate false thoughts, never fail in correct mindfulness, and extinguish the illusion of personal possession. And this is important. What they're saying here is, one, they don't generate false thoughts. So this is the practice aspect of Chan, that we cannot develop false thoughts or discriminations. You want to be a practitioner, but you want to hold on to your discriminations, you know. And so you're listening to somebody, yes, 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 and they're saying, and you remember, you have to do that, yes, 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 yes. And then they, okay, fine, I'll do it. Jerk. You know, you can't do that. Every time you do that, you know, you're locking yourself into samsara. Every time you make discriminations like that. Now, are there any of you in the audience that doesn't do that? Well, you see, why you're here. You missed Chan 101 practice. So don't do that. It's hard not to do it, but it's a practice. It's not easy at all. Okay. And then it says that they don't generate false thoughts or never fail to correct mindfulness, meaning that if there's something that's coming up in mind that's based on greed, hatred, ignorance, or attaching to an ego, they let it go. So when you sit to meditate, you have to use your highest discernment to see these sensations that are arising in mind. They haven't even turned into a thought yet. And some of them are just troublemaker sensations looking for something, just looking and looking and trying to scan through and trying to draw something out of the deep-seated consciousness to try to bring something to replace the method. And now, if that was you, why would you do that? That would be stupid, right? It would be dumb of you to say, okay, I'm going to sit here and meditate, and I'm going to create a situation where I'm going to purposely sabotage my meditation. That would not make sense. Yet we do it. But it isn't a life and being that's doing that. We've got to put it on the other side. It is phenomena. We've got to put it on the other side. Only when you're meditating, use the awareness of mind. And when you see these little things coming up, looking for trouble, put them there, illuminate them. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to call them names, pigeonhole them, or whatever. All of that stuff you can do, but that's just to put a pacifier in your mouth to stop the baby from crying. As I see it, none of you need that at this stage in your practice. Okay. And then the last part that's important is that to extinguish the illusion of personal possession. Again, personal possession is going to get you every single time. And Shifu was kind of interesting because there was one time when, maybe more than once, when his family came to him and said, you know, big brother or little brother, whatever rank he was, the family's really hurting financially, and can you give us some money? And Master Sheng says, I don't have any money. And they go, what do you mean you don't have any money? You know, you're getting like millions in donations. You built this temple, you built this university, and you say you don't have any money? And he was going, I don't have any money. I do not own anything. I do not have anything, you know. I have no need of money. And it was, I mean, it's a hard thing for his family to look at it and say, well, how can that even make any sense? But to him, he was a practitioner. He was the best example. If he went and said, okay, to the person, you know, to his secretary, can you give him a check for 100,000 yuan or whatever? Then he would be betraying his practice by doing that. I'm sure they would write him a check if you wanted to do that, but it would be violative of everything that he was standing for, and including the fact that he didn't have any money. That money would have been embezzling, you know, you could say. I'm sure everybody would say, well, it's all right, it's his family, let him do it. But no, he can't do that. He doesn't have possessions. This is one of the things that I see in terms of monastics that is such an incredible effort on their part, that they do not hold on to possessions. I mean, of course they have their little things and whatever, but you know, they don't have, you know, an apartment or a house or a mansion or something else, you know, where they go vacation at. They've taken this vow. And so this idea of, when he uses as a refrain, illusion of personal possession, is very important, because we can't have things like that. You know, I don't think, let's see, Yuli, oh yeah, she's here. She's a cat lover, you know, and so Yulia, you know, I would ask her, can you own a cat? You know, you can't own a cat owns you. And so the thing is that you can't see things in this way of personal possession. Owning the cat is an illusion. All now you have to do is just expand it to everything else, and everything else that you think that you own, even if you have a cell phone, my cell phone, say, come back 10 years from now and see if you want it. You know, you want my cell phone? I'll give it to you. It's free. No, you know, that doesn't even work anymore in the networks, you know, and we use this one right here. And so it's something that's important for us to understand. This is Chan. This is what Chan is. And so they say, okay, because of this, they are not subject to birth and death. Since they are not subject to birth and death, they achieve the ultimate state of serene extinction. Serene extinction meaning that this world is seen as an illusion, as a dream. It's serene. No, I'm good with that. But yeah, we're going to get rid of the world. Yeah, we can get rid of it. What about everybody else? Well, whatever's there, whatever's good that's not an illusion, cannot be killed, cannot be destroyed. It's just mine. So it's not that bad. We're not going to destroy the world like some kind of a Marvel Comics arch enemy or villain. We're simply creating this pure land and slowly segueing into the fact that there truly isn't a life in being. But the Buddhas, this is the idea of Subhatism, the sudden enlightenment, sees this very clearly, that it is in this way. So they are not doing harm to mind. In fact, they created the mind. Okay, next question. Maybe one more. You say that such like Dharma nature is embodied by both sentient beings and Buddhas identically without duality. Therefore, if one group is deluded, both should be deluded. If one group is enlightened, then both should be enlightened. Why are only Buddhas enlightened and sentient beings deluded? again, this question goes right to the very essence of the Chan practice and understanding of Ekayana, just this mind. When someone is asking these questions, they're asking it as a mechanical puppet. If they had achieved a realization, they know that that which moves the mouth of the mechanical puppet is not other than the Buddha mind already. There is nothing that's there that's deluded. It is just a dream. But it's a dream that just seems to be perpetuated and in the cycle of samsara going again and again and again through lifetimes. But when we see that all of that is just created by the mind, this idea of Ekayana, which all flowed in from many different sources and many different sutras into Chan, it shines so bright, like this incredible diamond that just shines and cuts through the illusions of that there is this life and being that's there, an ego that needs to be saved. So when we save or deliver sentient beings, we are just simply neutralizing those habitual patterns in mind that carry on this facade that there is something separate from mind itself. And in this way, there is no duality. It is just the slumbering of the Buddha mind. And so that's my answer to this, right? So because it's saying, well, they should be the very much the same. You know, why can't they? Are they either deluded or not deluded? We have to know. You know, sentient beings. Again, it's comparing a mechanical puppet with the Buddha mind. So here's the answer, and I absolutely love it. And he says, at this point, we enter the inconceivable portion of this teaching. So he's saying, okay, sit down because we're going into the inconceivable portion of this teaching. We're going to go deep here, which is what I just was talking to you about. But let's see how he responds to it, which cannot be understood by the ordinary mind. So in this way, what he's referring to the ordinary mind is the mind, the deluded mind of a sentient being, which is illusory. One becomes enlightened by discerning the mind. One is deluded because of losing awareness of true nature. This is so important because I always talk about you need to be aware. If you're aware, you're using your true nature. And so when you don't use it, then you're just this mechanical puppet that thinks that you are real. If the conditions necessary for you to understand this occur, then they occur. It cannot be definitely explained. Simply rely on the ultimate truth and maintain awareness of your own true mind. So it's saying that my words to you, if they were so powerful, in this moment, you could all reach Buddhahood just by listening to them. But it is the causes and conditions that have to come into play in which brings this about. And so one has to practice sincerely and cultivate mind, investigate mind, so that those conditions will be there. When those conditions are proper, the mind will unfold just like a lotus opening, so incredible, or a diamond that's just spinning and reflecting in all directions this clear light. But it is not something that we can conceive of. I want to be a lotus opening, or I want to be a diamond. You can't do it that way. You just have to practice. You have to have faith, and that's what he's saying here. Is that that you have to have faith. Let me read my note here. So my note was saying that it is that you have to understand that the one that's listening to this right now, this lecture, listening also to Master Hongren, that person has really never been deluded. That the intrinsic nature that you have is clear. You just simply have to realize that, accept it, and practice it, and it will become clear. That is what the beauty of Chan is taking all of these high-level teachings and putting them into a way in which we can practice. Huayan, Tian Tai, they have very detailed ways of practicing. Abhidharma school, or excuse me, Theravadins, they have detailed ways of practicing. Chan is just sitting. But somehow we forgot to tell the people, don't just sit on the cushion and hope for the best. You have to know why you're there, and that's right view. And that's what Chan brings to the table. So I'll leave you there, and we'll continue on with him next week, part 2. I'll take questions. No questions today again? You guys all understood this then? Oh, by the way, I'm so happy to see my dearest friend Chang Shen that's here, a monastic out of Jinsan, and she's very capable. If you ever have an opportunity to meet her, just go up to her and tell her that you're one of my students. She will welcome you warmly. And if you don't say you're one of my students, she'll still welcome you warmly. She's an incredible practitioner with right view. So I'm so happy to see her anytime, but I'm happy to see her here today. So let me tofu. So you can unmute her for a second. Hold on, there you are. We're gonna unmute you so you can. Santa, you working on that? You have to, I think, maybe unmute yourself. Oh, there you are. You're on.
I really miss you, Gilbert. Very nice to see you today. Last time I want to catch your last time the week your Zoom talk, but I don't know, I cannot get in. But now, yeah, I can. Yeah.
Well, I'm very happy to see you here, and you know, you're still in the Chan Hall, right? As
yes.
part of your, and then you're also teaching over there. Have you started?
So right. Yeah, but because in Taiwan our 7-day retreat hasn't started. Yeah, it's maybe the half of the later this year still cannot, not the retreat is still not open. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to getting an invitation to come back there and to continue on with the Dharma talks there.
So, yes, many people ask the December retreat is that Gilbert guided? Yeah, but this time because the visa is still not open, so we looking for the next March.
And that's
people miss you.
That's what I had in mind. I was thinking maybe next March I can come, so that would be good. So tell the people, hold on, I will be there. So I'm feeling physically better too, so I can travel now. So it's a little bit harder, but it's good to see that, and I know that you you are, people are in capable hands with you. And so I'm so happy to see you here. And so if ever you have any questions, or you have the question, students have questions, please, you can always contact me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, Michael, let's see what you got.
So this is goes back to this the story of this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I forgot the details of the story, but maybe you could comment on it in one of, like, either now or maybe in a future lecture. It's like this master, this student who asks the master a question, and the master doesn't tell him the answer, and then many years later, the student hears like a little rock kicking the bamboo tree, and suddenly gets it and goes back to the master and says, "Thank you for not telling me how mind works, I guess, back then, because I wouldn't, if you would have told me then, I would never have figured it out." So in a sense, about your teaching, you always tell us how mind work and how it's important, and you tell us so clearly that it's hard to find, it's so clearly stated in the sutras, unless you go to Hongren maybe, or but it's not all over the place very clearly stated. So I wonder how this relates to this story.
Well, it relates exactly, like, let me go back to it, because your question is a very good one, because this is what he's saying to you, because he's saying it's not in the words, and that's why he said this is the inconceivable portion of the teachings. And so he's saying that if the conditions necessary for you to understand this occur, then they occur. It cannot be definitively explained. Simply rely on your ultimate truth and maintain awareness of your own true mind. So this maintaining the awareness of the own true mind is what makes this kind of a breakthrough, where you do that. There's a famous story, and the master, his name escapes me right now. I may be a product of my age, but he had meditated the entire winter in a solitary retreat, and then in spring he smelled, I think, I don't know whether it was apple or cherry blossom, that was there. I think it was cherry blossom, and he smelled it distinctly, the smell of the blossom from outside. And he said that if I had not endured the coals of winter, I would never have been able to smell the cherry blossom in spring. And in other words, saying that in due time, this all comes. So there's no set time where we can get it. There's no set Dharma that we can get it. And that's the thing, like I always mention, we cannot teach the Dharma. We can only direct people. But where we direct, we do not direct with the finger pointing this way, is we are asking them to turn the mind's eye inward to look at everything there, including what you believe to be your own mental formations. Little by little it comes. So some people, it comes with a very quick experience. Other people have different realizations. I know Changshen has had several realizations, of different kinds, and it just comes to them, and but it there's not one of them that defines that moment that you get it, but you just know. And other times it's like a crock pot that is just cooking, and the person would not know that, except that they just know the difference between this illusory mind and mind itself, because their actions will demonstrate it. And so it doesn't have to be where they have to grab the brass ring and go, "Oh, I got this," and trying to always reaching for that, like you're on a carousel and the ring's right there and you keep trying to reach for it. Sometimes that is an obstruction in itself, but your actions reflect that there is a realization in mind. Okay, so there's a couple of you out there, and so you should keep that in mind, that you don't need to have some kind of an awakening experience like that. Sometimes it's something that is slowly coming, and you will not know that. Okay, later on, other things will happen. One realization doesn't mean you're enlightened. but it gives you the faith to be able to practice more. So that's kind of how that fits in there. And as one is able to do that, then one becomes more and more experienced, that they can practice in this way, and their senses become heightened. It's kind of unusual because I'm having this enlightening experience right now post-COVID, which is very unusual, that some smells, I can smell them like as if I'm standing next to them, but they can be in a different part of the house or somewhere else, but it's as if I'm smelling it right next to the smell. But not everyone. It's a very unusual experience. Today I was smelling something and I'm going, I smell something burning, and there was somebody had put some toast in the other room to heat up their sandwich, and it was just, I could smell as if I was right over the toaster. So it's kind of interesting, but I don't think that's an enlightening experience. So it's not quite the little rock hitting the bamboo. So, but that's fine. Okay, any other questions? Yes, go ahead, Chan Shin. Go ahead, you can speak. Is she unmuted? Said, oh, there, you're on now.
Yeah, I would like to ask the method about 话头 as a teacher. Okay, or not teacher, just guide the retreat. No, because recently I started to read some, like the story in Chinzhong, Chen school, and for example, like they're using the turning words, like Master Chongshen, the Chongshen, say his dog has Buddha nature, and they say ooh, So I don't know, like for us, because we are just very infant teacher. So if we guide Hua Tou retreat, anyway, I feel the Hua Tou's method maybe for in this story, and I get some insight from it. But as right now, the modern society and in terms of the Hua Tou retreat, and I feel if we don't, be very mindful, and we just shut out or some kind of push the practitioners, maybe in the walking meditation or something. Anyway, I just feel so far I don't have. Sometimes I do that a little bit. I think it can maybe stop their mind, but sometimes sometimes I'm not sure. I feel sometimes I'm not sure I have the confidence. So my question is that what do you think about using this, teaching this method in retreat?
The thing is that because we've had discussions before about your experiences, and I know that you've gotten to the point where your mind has stopped. This ordinary mind or illusory mind has stopped. You use that faith and you use that heart to use with your natural talents, whatever talents you have, to be able to bring that out and share it with others. So you already have the faith, you already have the realizations, you have the experience, but you have to have faith in yourself, in the confidence that you can share with others and find the ways to do it. Doesn't mean that if you do it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's like my jokes, people will laugh, other times people go like, what is that? That's like very, very weak joke. And the thing is that you just keep trying, and you try and you try, and then whatever works, you keep. Whatever doesn't work, then you try something else. But as they're saying that there's 84,000 ways to the Dharma. So you just keep working on different ways. So when you're using the silent illumination, excuse me, the walking meditation, you know, do that shout, Ling Chi shout, you know, somewhere along the line as the people are running. And it doesn't matter that to try to shake them out of what's doing so that they're not expecting that, you know, just try different things. Go up to somebody, you know, with your staff, you know, who stopped? Tell me right now, who stopped? You know, and you make it loud enough so that the people, everyone listens to it. So you're asking everybody that. And so when you see it, once I did that with somebody who was very high level, and he was stopped, and then he started thinking, and I went, too late, and walked away, because in that moment his mind went from being stopped to being trying to cogitate an answer, to think of an intellectual answer. But those are the things that we use to try to trap the people. Again, in the Huatou, you have to present right view as to what they're doing using the Huatou, that it's before the word. So you always have to emphasize in everything that it's before the word, that they have to come from asking the question immediately back, and their attention should not be on the word, but from where the word arises. And that's a real key with the Huatou, and that's not emphasized enough, that one has to keep coming so that their mind becomes quieter and quieter and more adept to be able to get to the front before the question arises, and keep it there, and then watch the Huatou coming out of the mind ground. And that's not easy, but that's what we do to be able to show, because the Huatou is meaningless. The mind ground is what the people have to experience. That's their intrinsic nature. That's from where the thoughts arise. Everything's created by that very, very source. And that's why the masters say that you always have to go to the source. And so using the Huatou in this way will be very productive. So it's just introducing them stronger to right view. When you introduce them stronger to right view, then they have this ability to borrow your realizations and your faith to practice well. And it changes. So I think you'll do fine. You have all the components to do that. You just have to just try different ways of doing it, and it will work for you. Okay, or work for them, I should say.
Okay. One second question is, I listening what you say is that I think, let me think, maybe my faith is not enough. The company not enough is because maybe a group of people, like 60 people, some people are, you use this, you use some very energetic approach. They are, you know, they correspondence with that. Yeah, but for other people, they feel stressful. Yeah, they feel, if you like use incense, like bead, and they feel like, oh, I feel this retreat. Oh, I hate the incense. Oh, yeah, I hate that sound. It's so stressful. And then at the end, the reward for the retreat is really like extreme. You know, some people say, oh, it's good. Some people say, oh, it's like stuck. Like I'm quiet, and then I'm be shocked, and I feel intense. So I feel like, oh, so I feel the incense, even like I already warned them in the beginning, that not warn them, just tell them that I might use incense. You know, like if you need incense, you raise your hand, I use incense. Even already say so clearly, and at beginning still like, and at the end of the, maybe just the very later day, like maybe the 5th day, the 6th day, 7th day, use incense. Still people feel like stressful. Yeah, hear the sound, feel stressful. But other people feel so good, so good. Yeah. So
Yeah. The thing is, when I was very young and teaching, I had a class that that the people, they wanted to tell me what to teach them, and they went, "Oh, you know, we want to learn this, or we want to do this," and and I disbanded the group. I quit the group, and I took several months to retool myself, and I came back and said, no one's ever going to tell me how to present the Dharma, because that comes from the heart. But on my part, I have to be correct with the Dharma. I have to do it in the right way, you know, so that I can help people. But I'm not here to just to please the people and give them some kind of a nice dream for 7 days. I'm here to try to awaken them. I don't want them to sleep anymore. So, you know, if you, as you remember, like the first times when I went to the retreat, the people were complaining because they weren't getting enough time to just sit and park their body because I was talking so much. And they'd never seen anybody talk like that. But that's my way of practicing. But in the end, the people, they understood what I was doing. You are the leader, and you do it from your heart. Don't worry about what other people say. Master Ling Chi said that if you're popular everywhere, then you're not doing proper work. Okay, so don't worry about that. He literally said, if you see his thing, he says, if you're proper, if everybody likes you everywhere you go, then you're not really doing it, because some people are going to get annoyed. To me, I'm not arrogant to say I don't care about that, but it's just that belongs to them, not to me. But I'm going to run this in the way where I feel that they can do their best and bring out the best in it. And if a couple of people aren't happy because they just wanted to just sit and they think that that's it, that's just old dog meditation, you know. And so I have no interest in presenting that where everybody's so happy and they went on this wonderful dream tour. You know, I want to awaken them from that. And so if you shout or you use your stick or whatever, you put it on the ground, you know, you can do that. You know, I don't know if you want to go in this day and age as much as Guolu did, you know, where he was hitting the people all the
that's
time.
too much.
Too much. So we use the Madhyamaka skull, so the middle way. Just hit them half as much. All right. But I think that that's the thing. Don't let anybody determine and tell you, say, excuse me, are you the leader of this group? Then what makes you think that you have this, you know? When you've studied as much as I have, then you can determine what you should be doing, you know. But if you want to dream, just go home and sleep for 7 days. Okay, it's the same thing.
Thank you.
You have to be very direct with them. Okay, all right. Yeah.
So coming home from this last retreat, I cracked open a number of different books and ended up settling on the Lankavatara Sutra, which is everything that you've been going over today is it's almost like it's directly from that sutra. The constant refrain being that whatever it is, it's just a projection of the mind. And they'll use a couple of teaching tools and say, use these tools. But eventually towards the end of the book, they'll say, oh, and those tools, just a projection of the mind. It's all just a projection of the mind. And like, that's pretty much just it. There isn't a whole lot in there regarding how to meditate or how to apply this, other than to just be clear. It's a projection of the mind, and that's it, like, period. And so in the application of this, both on and off the cushion, I can't say that there's been a continuous stream of wakefulness, because there is just those habitual tendencies will continue to grab and pull away from, if it's the method while sitting in meditation or getting involved in all of these streams of thought, imagining while about my everyday. Is there something, it's almost like, is there something else to be applied here, something that's being missing, other than to just remember as often as one can that whatever you're getting caught up in, it's just a projection of the mind? Like, is there another tool that I should be applying, or is this just keep going with it?
I forgot the master that said this, but one of the masters, upon hearing a question like this, said, "What, do you want another cup of slop?" No, you already have it. Why do you want, like, you get in line to get a cherry on top of your sundae, and you want another cherry on top? Would that make it any better? You read the Lanka, so now you're to the profound, but you got to go to the esoteric. You have to make it, you have to realize that what's there. You're start from the beginning and go back through again, or open up the book and just read it any place in the sutra and go back to it. There is nothing else. That's why the Lankavatara Sutra says, oh, and by the way, all of this is just projections. They had said of the three jewels, only one is real. The Sangha and the Dharma are not real. They're just projections. Only the Buddha mind and its intrinsic nature is there. You already possess it. So what more do you want? Anything else, and then you're off the middle way. So you right there on the middle way, where there's noumenon, phenomenon, what's conceptual and non-conceptual, and you just keep it there, where the mind is observing the conceptual. It doesn't make the thoughts go away. It doesn't need to make the thoughts go away. The thoughts will go away naturally as you are illuminating them. So you just have to now put it into more and more practice. And again, going back to Master Ling Chi, he said, oh, the people, they say that this is, they can't do it, and it's so hard to do this and whatever. And he said, all the more so you need to apply harder the practice in your daily life. Get to a higher level of practice on a daily life. It will all pay off. It is all, what I keep talking about is this money in the bank. And I think in the next week, this master talks about that whatever you're doing, whatever you're practicing, it's not all for naught. It's all saved up. And at some point, it's going to count. But if you're looking for something else, some higher meaning, there is no higher meaning. You're looking at things that from the samsaric side that are going to define the noumenon or the inconceivable, and that's not possible. So the only way to get through is to see through samsara. And if you can do that, then it will work. But don't look for the next greatest or best thing to do. That is part of your obstruction. I've been giving this great thought in terms of that. So your questions arising at this time was not by accident, because I was asking you to raise these questions so I can help you. And the same with Michael, because these are things that are your obstructions. You have to let them go. Don't try to fabricate the mind into this perfect mind. The mind is perfect as it is. We just don't see that. We don't understand that these ideas of a sentient being, all of these thoughts, they're all projections. They're all projections. So once we understand that, and you just keep looking at it, then go back to the Diamond Sutra and see how that fits. But the Lankas of Vayapula Sutra, it has everything that you need to know to be able to do it. So just go back to it and do it again, see how it works. Okay. Any follow-up question? No.
No.
All right. Okay, good enough then. All right, so we went a little bit over time. I thank you all for coming. Just about this time, my voice is fading anyway. So we'll pick it up next week and continue on. These particular questions, what I found really valuable is that they go to the essence of the practice. And just like Ian was saying, they're in the Lankavatara Sutra, they're in many sutras. And the thing is as you begin to see this, then you'll see from where these masters picked up their information. And that's where Chan comes alive. Okay. And doing that. And so, no, this is how we look at it. Again, historians, philosophers, Buddhist scholars, that's fine. But for us as practitioners, we should know all of those things, but we should know them in the terms of putting them into practice in Chan. Okay. So I will see you next week. Omitofo. Take care. Blessings to you all. Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Everyone can unmute if you want.
Over.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So good to see you guys.